Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers. This morning I'm looking at a book from Oxford University Press which is on a very interesting area of law and general financial information. It's called Sovereign Debt Management, and it's this book here. It's been edited by two people, Rosa Lastra and Lee Buchheit. And this is the book. It's running into about just under 500 pages. You've got the index at the back there. Then you've got the standard structure, which is paragraph numbering at the sides, detailed footnotes, extremely helpful. There's a lot of quite technical stuff involved in this. You haven't actually got indexes at the front of each chapter, but that doesn't matter too much because of the content of the publication itself. You've got a lot of case law, which is actually there. Then you've got other things. That's actually the content section, quite a lot of individual chapter headings. Then you've also got a useful little starting off point, approaches to sovereign debt resolution rather, and recent developments right at the beginning, because obviously this is an important area. There's a nice little biographical note about Lee Buchheit there, and then right at the front, which is what I thought was a nice preface there as well. And then what you've got is actually a rather sweet dedication to Lee Buchheit at the front. And it's a good book. It's a heavy book, of course. It's hardback, and we're dealing here with the financial issues which are bedeviling much of the world at the moment. We've given it the title in our review, which is on the web and in the journals, Examining the Crises of Sovereign Debt in 2014. And this is what we're basically saying. Since the 1980s, approximately, if not sometime before, sovereign debt has emerged as a well-nigh intractable international problem. And writing in the foreword to this thoughtful and scholarly examination of sovereign debt, John B. Taylor from Stanford University refers to trenchant observations made by the book's erudite and world-renowned co-author Lee Buchheit to the effect that, quote, there are several key common elements in sovereign debt crisis, whether in emerging economies or in some of the more advanced European countries today. And he goes on to say you can see these elements, says Taylor, in all the chapters of this book. Obviously it's important because this problem is bedeviling a lot of countries at the moment, and we've been going through it for the last 4 years in the UK right up front because of the need to deal with overspending and the whole problems of the mounting debt, the whatever you want to call it, the deficit, the austerity issues, but the issues are there and they've got to be dealt with. And by the way, it may be that we've gone back to the 80s, but this has been a problem over the centuries, so nothing new. And it's just got to be about one thing, and that is how we're going to deal when it comes to states. It's called sovereign debt management, but when we're dealing with states, member states, if you like, of the EU or whatever it might be, when we're looking at individual countries themselves. This has been published recently by OUP, again up to the highest of their standards, and the book, in the words of the co-author, Rosa Lastra, presents, quote, a general treatise on sovereign debt management, and contains no less than 28 learned articles, and all sort of put together in the chapters, replete with the carefully researched analyses of no less than 36 expert contributors, mainly from top international law practices, government agencies and leading academic institutions. And of course that again is the beauty when you're getting a compendium. So you're getting different views all coming together, and it has been well thought out with the structure, I may hasten to add. Their impressive slate of practical experience, says Lastra, includes lending, borrowing, regulating, analysing restructuring and litigating sovereign debt. Again, an important area. The idea for the book was the fortunate outcome of the meeting of the International Monetary Law Committee, which was held in Rome in 2011, this being a standing committee of the International Law Association. And it's useful, at least they're talking and trying to see how to deal with, frankly, irresponsible behaviour by certain people, putting it bluntly, which has led to some of the problems. And it's the same whether it's your own personal account or whether it's a country's account. It's the same basic problem of now, how do you manage within limits? Or do you just break the limits because someone else will pay, which is the attitude I've certainly come across in politics. Anyway, I'm diverting from attention to the book. It's easy to navigate this book, which is again a useful point. The paragraph numbering in particular is helpful, I think. It includes a detailed table of contents at the front, a useful index, and an extensive table of cases and of the legislation used. And to say the book is a brilliant and time-saving research tool is a bit of an understatement, I think. For the amount of research contained in the single volume here is truly mind-bending. We lost count of the number of journals cited in the footnotes, but probably estimate well over 100. It's certainly an invaluable source of wisdom and insight into the thorny problems created by the international debt issue itself, which now afflicts developed as well as emerging countries. Plus there's considerable emphasis on postulating its causes and possible cures. As I said before, down the centuries we've had this problem and it won't go away. It's just that we've got to look internationally at some stage in how we manage it. And this is one of the many books we've got on what is called sovereign debt management. It's actually dealing with the borrowing, dealing with the money problem you've got. The various articles, particularly those by Buchheit, who originally trained as a philosopher before reading law, and for whom this book is the tribute, which is a very nice thing to do at the front, will provide, I think, much food for thought on sovereign debt in particular and debt in general. Borrowing money, Buchheit says in the book's final article, can become a hideous addiction, further pointing out that democracies in particular struggle with grim realities, the problem that we actually are grappling with in its simplest form. By the way, the fascinating biographical note on Buchheit is well worth reading. That's right at the front. Apropos the Scottish referendum that we've got coming up in September 2014 and the ongoing secessionist problems in the Ukraine, which bedeviled us at the beginning of 2014, it's interesting and strangely topical to note the title of his thesis, published by Yale University Press in the 1970s, Secession, the Legitimacy of Self-Determination, that's the title, which focused on, for example, Katanga, Biafra, the Kurds and Bangladesh. Of course, all the usual countries are there, and you can see that, as I've said before, it's not something that is new in that sense. It just seems to be repetitive and unfortunately has a rather good precedent in that history does tend to repeat itself, and I sometimes wonder if we've learned anything. However, let me say, to conclude, suffice to say that the book should attract, we think, a very wide readership, not merely of lawyers but economists, of course, as well as commentators, policymakers and politicos worldwide. Chancellors of the Exchequer, please note. The publication date is 2014. I think it's an excellent statement of where we are at the moment. It's a very interesting area of law. Again, I'd like to thank OUP in particular for what is a first-class book. It's very detailed. I mean, some of it I do tend to wander off a little bit with some of the stuff in here, but it's very interesting if you're interested in this particular problem, and it's an international problem. It's well worth reading something like this to get an idea of what the problems are. So can I thank OUP and the two editors and all the people who contributed to this book for what is a first-class exposition at the moment of where we are actually in 2014. And I hope we learned something from it. I've certainly learned something from the book. That's the main thing. Thank you to all concerned anyway. Bye-bye.